Well, today we are joined by the second most elusive guest that I've pursued, my friend Marc Katz. There still is one other guy out there that's more
Hmm.
elusive than you, so you're the second most elusive guest. I'm extremely excited to have Marc on. He was a request of a listener, actually, Brandy Preston, who is a mutual friend of ours. So thank you, Brandy, for the idea. And We're gonna have some fun. I've talked about earlier episodes about unlikely friends, and Marc Katz and I would say, are unlikely friends, and so we'll probably tell a little bit of that story. Um, Marc Katz, welcome to Cowboys Not Eggheads. It's a pleasure to have you on.
I must say, Sam, I am really looking forward to this. Having listened, having known you the way I do, and watching this evolve, I was really looking forward to doing this. I know it took a little time to put it on the calendar, but you know what they say: if not now, when?
That's
So
exactly right.
that's
That's
it.
exactly right. Um, so I guess my first question, Marc Katz, is how does some guy, some cowboy or cowboy wannabe or cowboy born and raised in Western Nebraska on a ranch, become friends with some Jewish guy from Brooklyn? How in the heck did that happen?
Sam, I ask myself that a lot because, as I don't know if it's as unlikely a friendship that we have as watching my daughter grow up to be closer to you than me vis-a-vis, that lifestyle.
Yeah,
So it's been interesting to say the least.
yeah. So Mark and I met on a campaign in my past life as a political operative, and Mark is not a political operative at all, and maybe that's why we got along, honestly. Um, but it kind of taken us back. I remember the first time you and I spoke on the phone. It was a congressional campaign, and Mark's from Connecticut, and Mark is in. I should tell people what you do for a living. I mean, why don't you tell folks what you do for a living?
Well, I'm in the world of real estate. Effectively, I'm an owner in many respects. I manage the properties I own. I'm with a group of people, one or two gentlemen primarily, and that's kind of how we got together because it was that very Mark Greenberg, who I have had my whole adult business career with, decided that he was going to entertain the world of politics, which is, as you well know, there's red, there's blue, and then there's purple. What did I know from anything? So,
Right.
as Mark's friend, partner, and slash uh, little brother in many respects, he jumped into the world, and somehow I got mixed into that universe with him.
Well, I think I was partially responsible for that, my friend. So Mark was kind of what I would say initially kind of a kitchen cabinet member of the campaign.
Mm.
Every candidate has somebody that's kind of around them uh, that candidate trusts, and that person has nothing but that candidate's best interest at heart, whether it be politics or otherwise or whatever. And
Mm.
you were kind of that guy. And we were searching for a campaign manager, as I recall. And it was kind of like the Dick Cheney thing. Like you, all of a sudden,
Mm.
he was searching for vice presidents, and he became the vice president. Well, sort of that way. And I don't. It wasn't something that you wanted at all.
Oh
And
no, no.
in God's honest truth, you didn't want any part of it. But you and I were on the phone once discussing this among other things. And I just remember there was a moment of that phone call where I, it seemed to me that we connected.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was. It just, sometimes when you talk to somebody, you just kind of know that you're going to connect with that person. I think part of it, Mark, was that at the end of the day, you and I were no bullshit.
Right.
And just strip all the rest of it away. Let's achieve the objective. And I vividly remember that phone call. It's just
I
very interesting to me.
Sam, I remember exactly where I was. I mean, to the exact position I was when I dialed the phone. Okay, where I was, and what it took to for me to finally say, you know what? To your point, my position with Mark was always like I was always kind of felt like I was the bulletproof vest,
Yeah,
because I felt like this guy's talking about politics, and he's in a world, does he know what he's doing? And then, quite frankly, as he's telling me all these grandiose ideas, he said, well, I have this guy in Nebraska that's going to, my consultant. And I was like thinking, he keeps talking.
It was now that I think about it, this phone call was really, it was a vetting call. You were vetting me.
Amen.
Even though I already signed the contract.
Well,
that's now it's coming back to me because you were calling to vet me, and I was okay with that. I mean, like, let's go.
It kind of worked both ways. What I always kind of realizing that was already a fait accompli, that you were there. Okay, I thought it was important that you understood just who and what you were involved with, as opposed, because he was not your typical, political being in any way, shape, or form. And I thought that was really important for any possibility of success, is that you have an idea what he is. And I was taking off the gloves. There was no point in sugarcoating it. And I think that's it. I think I found out, were genuine and sincere. And I think you recognize that was my entire purpose there, was being, putting it on the table and understanding.
We spoke the same language, and there's some, I recently put together some of my principles and for a coach of mine, which is, by the way, Marc Katz, if you don't have principles, what are we here for? But I think you and I share some of the same principles, and they came through. And one is, one for me was be yourself. Another is do the right thing when nobody's looking. I know that's Marc Katz move,
Amen.
Big time. Ride for the brand, which is a cowboy kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. You and I will ride for the brand, regardless. What's the other one? Tell the truth is another one of my things. And so I think you and I, from a value standpoint, size each other up pretty quickly. And
sincerity.
Here we are.
There's a real modicum of sincerity there, and and being genuine about it.
Genuine and authentic. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it was a long time ago, because I saw a Facebook reminder pop up memory. 13 years ago, I was going door to door for Mark Greenberg in his first primary. 13 years.
You're getting me older, Sam. I'm looking at these pictures. I've got gray hair. I look like a Santa Claus beard, and now you're telling me 13 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it just
I was
goes
a young
by.
Man when we started this.
Well, your daughter, who I want to talk about a little bit, if you don't mind, I'm sure she might. But
you can't even.
She was 12.
Wait till I give you the newest one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she was 12, and I remember, 12 is a terrible time, and I've discussed that numerous times on this podcast. It's a very difficult time of life to go through, and you were dealing with some of those issues of being 12. I mean, it's tough. And so that's how long it's been. Now, your daughter, fast forward, your daughter is now in Texas, and she's married. And I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give the synopsis, and then Mark, you can fill in. But here's a girl that ended up going to college on a rifle scholarship, right?
No, she didn't take the scholarship, but she was on a rifle team.
But she was on a rifle team, and she was a hunter, a fisherman. She's an outdoorsman. She's been on the show. What's the name of that show? I can't think of it.
For Love or Likes.
For hunting. Sydney Katz is her name. Right. And here's a girl that was born and raised in Cobb.
No. Started in Manhattan, New York City.
Manhattan. Okay.
And then from there to Connecticut.
There to Cobb, Connecticut, and
ultimately to Kentucky
to Texas, where she married a Texan. And these folks couldn't be more cowboys if you wanted to. And I was privileged enough to be invited to her wedding. And it was, I've never been to a cowboy Jewish wedding, but it was fantastic. Now, the rabbi that performed that ceremony has actually been on this podcast, Rabbi Brian, because I met him at that ceremony. He conducted the ceremony. But here's a total out of left field for Marc Katz. His daughter is not, didn't fit the mold for what you would think. So tell the story of your daughter. Sorry, Sydney,
Well,
but we're going to talk about you.
yeah, we're going to talk about it. Well, I like to say, people say you raised a real tomboy, and I kind of like to say no, my daughter's tried to make a man out of me. You're right. A Jew from Brooklyn here, here I am, going in Brooklyn, going to school in Albany, going back to, New York City, Manhattan. That's where our real estate was, northwest corner of Connecticut, all over the place. We have my daughter. We moved to Greenwich, Connecticut, which in and of itself is, I refer to Coscop as opposed to Greenwich for a variety of reasons. And Sydney, we went on a 3-day weekend with another friend of mine and his daughters to a working ranch in Texas. And the only people on the ranch were all military or former military. That's who they all hired, because they all, took orders and did what they were told. And at that weekend, they said, "You city slickers want to learn to shoot." And the next thing you know, they take out a whole bunch of rifles and some blankets and coconuts and plastic bottles and lay it out in the field and give us some safety tips. And lo and behold, within 18 months, Sydney was Connecticut's junior Olympic gold medalist for air rifle and silver medalist for 22 in Colorado Springs. She gave up. She was a swimmer up through all those years, through a junior in high school. And
Mark, how old was she when you went on this? I'm sorry to interrupt, but how old was
we
she?
We must have been a sophomore in high school,
okay.
Sophomore or junior in high school. I always
Gotcha.
kind of mix that up a little bit. But she, in short order, was taken under the wing of a couple of local guys here. We found a local shooting club, and she was. She attracted all the boys because, as you know, Sam, she's luckily doesn't look like me. Well,
let's put it this way: you and I have less than 1,000 Instagram followers, and I think she's got 70,000 or something.
59 or 60,000 these days.
There you go. Okay.
But yeah, it was an interesting journey. I remember we won a fishing trip. And I went in to redeem it. And the guy said, "What are you going for?" And I said, "What do I know? My daughter won this trip, so we're going to go out." And I showed him a picture of my daughter with the bear that she had recently hunted. And he looked and he goes, "Oh, wait a second." He goes, "Are you telling me girl hunts and fishes and looks like that? Oh my God, she's going to make some guy so happy." And that's been the journey, So
yeah.
Anyway, so from there she gave up swimming. Decided she was offered a spot on the Kentucky rifle team, and who knew that rifle was a Division I sport. And literally stepped foot on the campus, and 2 steps. So I see myself here. And went to Kentucky. Didn't stay long on the rifle team. Decided that her academics were more important. Went for animal science and stuff like that.
Sure.
Graduated in 4 years, to her credit. And but along the way, I mean, she met a guy from Texas, really good guy, Brady, and the two of them hit it off. And lo and behold. I don't know. We've been to bear and elk and Africa and shark hunting. And the other day, she texted me out of the blue, "Dad, what hunt do you want this year?" And I was like, anytime your daughter wants to do something with you, you say yes. I mean, that's just the bottom line, because comes a time they don't even want to know you,
Yeah.
So I was so excited. I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" She goes, "Oh, I don't know. Last year she took me, I did my first duck hunt." Sam, this is me. Okay, doing this stuff, right?
Yeah. Listeners, again, this is some Jewish dude from Brooklyn. I mean, fish out of water deal.
Yeah. So anyway, I said, "Well, what do you think?" And she's going, "Well, we can do pronghorn." "Oh, really? Or caribou, or a duck hunt, or a bird hunt in Washington?" And I was like, "Sid, I follow whatever it is you want to do." The fact that's the bottom line. So I kid around and I say, I think I'm the only Jew I know that's got camouflage, and it's not a fashion statement. Yeah.
That's right. You're legit. You've done things that I haven't done. I mean, some of these hunts, Sam, and stuff.
Hey, when I have to, I can pull it off. So I go along these things. It's always for her. But when we were in Africa, babe, I made sure that she wasn't embarrassed. So
Right.
it was all good.
Yeah. No, I
I don't know either.
it's awesome. Well, what's been the big transition for you? I mean, you're a go along, get along kind of guy, a guy that's got a tremendous positive attitude. I mean, you are truly one of the most positive attitude people I know. But it's still got to be it's from going from your world of commercial real estate on the East
Mm-hmm.
Coast to being out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, absolutely
Yeah.
nowhere where there's no people.
Mm-hmm.
There's many more animals than there are people.
Yeah.
And here you are. You've got a high-powered rifle, and you're trekking up some mountain hunting
And I can shoot.
something.
Yeah.
How in the world has that transition been for you? What's the most surprising part of that transition been for you?
I have to tell you, I think for me, it has truly been about maintaining and watching the relationship with my daughter. Like, I don't know that I've done any of these things on my own for my own pure enjoyment, but seeing her growth and watching her and supporting what she did, so that I think that's really what did it. These things. Listen, I grew up watching Mutual of Omaha, Marlon Perkins on. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
when she said the first time for her 18th birthday, the big present was she wanted to go on a hunt wild game. I was like, what does that mean? That's all I could think of, and I called a couple people, and we ended up finding an outfitter who I felt, because I wasn't going to let her go by herself, not the way she looks, and so I said, okay, well, whatever it is, you do it, and um, I think that's what made the whole thing work. It's just supporting her, knowing this is what she's all about, and not looking down. I mean, so many people, especially in this area, oh, you say a gun, you say this, you say, oh, you don't understand, animals. It's. I mean, people just don't get it, and I had to be open to. We're all wired differently, and I respected her wiring, and that's kind of what it was. I wasn't forcing me on her. I was letting her blossom. I think as a father, I think as a parent, what you do is you give your children tools and see where they go with it, and you see what some things they like, some things they don't like. So I wasn't trying to put her into my box. I was trying to understand hers, and she has really, I've been blessed by having my wife and I both having Sydney in our lives. I mean, her sense of humor, her overall outlook on that stuff. The world she's opened up to me is unbelievable. So I
Yeah,
think that's what's really driven it all.
that's fantastic. It's a great answer. Do you have fun going? Because it's okay. Take Sid away.
Yeah.
Like if you and I went on a hunt, would it be it
Mm-hmm.
would clearly wouldn't be the same experience
Right.
as with your daughter, but
Right. Right.
would you have fun? Do you have fun because of the people you're with, or are you learning to have fun because you actually like to hunt? Like some of the things that
Well,
go along with that.
I think I certainly don't not like it. Because if
Right.
you didn't like it, then I mean, you wouldn't be open to doing it all. And if you're going to do it well and appreciate it. And the thing that I really did, and I think the first time that I pulled the trigger actually was, everyone goes, "Oh, how can you do this?" And what happened is, I learned right away to appreciate the outfitters that we were with, and realizing this is their way of life, and who am I, some city, to look down on what they do. I mean, it takes all types of people to do all types of things. So when you start to appreciate in any mode of life, there are people that are good at what they do, and then there are hacks. There's good attorneys and there's ambulance chasers. There's that kind of thing, and I think once I honed in on that, I started to appreciate it and wanted to do well wherever I did. So yes, I do appreciate it. Like I said, would I be the one to say, "Hey, let's do this"? Not so much necessarily, because there's a million other things that are always catching my responsibilities, if you will. But once there, and let's do it and do it right and enjoy the hell out of it, because there's no guarantee tomorrow. right? So you might as well enjoy today and just do
You
the
and I
right
talk
thing
about that all the
all the
last
time.
5 years is like the first. This like this.
Yeah.
It's a major theme of ours. There is no
Yeah.
tomorrow. I mean, there's no guarantee. And the pandemic
No.
clearly brought that into light for a lot of us,
Hmm.
myself included.
Hmm.
Obviously,
Yeah, and I applaud you. How many times we discussed that? I love the. I see you're all out and about, and then they say it's not a dress rehearsal, man. It's
well,
not what
it's
we got.
the difference is I'm doing things I want to do. It's just I'm not getting paid for them.
That's okay. That's okay.
Well, let's talk about something that you do that I know that you like, and I'm sure that you, I don't know, if force is the right word, but Sydney grew up with, and that is the wonderful world of Disney. Marc Katz is the absolute Disney World connoisseur. And it's actually Brandy and I have talked about this. I guess we haven't got this done, but we're going to get this done because we just said we got to do these things. Marc Katz is the number one connoisseur that I know of Disney World. If you want to go to Disney World, you have got to talk to Marc Katz. And I want to go with you and Brandy, and we're going to go to Disney's World someday, and we are going to
And
have fun. Now, how is it that you became such a Disney fan, and why? It's the Disney World thing.
yeah.
What? Tell me about that whole thing.
Okay. All right. Well, here's let me just. I'm going to give you kind of where we are now versus where I had always been. This
Sure.
woke stuff, they're making me crazy.
Yes.
I have to tell you something that that where they've become now to make a guy like me, who, to your point, is been. If I turn
There's
this
no
around
bigger
and you
fan.
guys saw what was in my,
Mickey Mouse
on my
galore.
shelves above you, it's nuts. It's just it's not normal for a 60-plus-year-old man to have this. Having said that, I've always looked at that as through the eyes of a child. Okay, and in the Disney, it was always about saying yes. How do you say yes? What it's all about, and I love my thing about going to Disney. Besides some of the early characters, I love that. I mean, the old, the World's Fair rides that were imported. That whole thing. So the old classic stuff. I love that. And when I was probably 13 or 14, I went to Disneyland with a friend of mine the first time, and the Pirates of the Caribbean, and then the Haunted Mansion just got me how good it was, and the music and stuff. And then it was just watching it through the eyes of a child. So when we go, and I go, first of all, my theory is I'm there a short period of time. It's a ridiculous amount of money. And it's not about waiting on lines. It's about, zigging when everybody's zagging. And when I would go with people, my thing was I got more enjoyment knowing the people I was with were, you know, watching in awe, if you will, and appreciating the Disney experience as opposed to the lines and all the aggravation that went with it. So I would get more pleasure making sure somebody was getting on with a 3.5 minute ride, a wait, than me being on the ride itself. So I'm running here, running there, running there. And again, it was like being there, and on the fourth day when somebody turns around and goes, "Oh my God, look at this," and they didn't hear, and they listened to all these other people at dinner complaining about, "Oh, I only did 3 rides in 5.5 hours and stuff," and we covered so much ground, we got to hit all the highlights. I love that. I love watching the people I'm with get it done, and it's sort of, I don't want to say beating the game, but it's playing the game and doing it right, and creating those experiences. And I must say, to this day, there's a few of those Kodak moments that hopefully you take pictures because the brain goes a little bit.
Yeah.
But hopefully those stick with me, and the pictures will do it justice.
Yeah, the memories will stick with you, and
Mm.
I completely relate to what you're saying, Mark. I've been fortunate enough to travel. I've been to 48 states, so I've been all over the country.
2 to go.
2 to go.
Okay.
Well, wait, three.
Okay, that would be
Alaska,
47.
Vermont, Maine. There's 4. Alaska, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire. That's
Oh
it.
my God, north.
Not that,
That's
yeah,
what.
yeah. So you're neck of
Those
the
are
woods.
simple.
Yeah,
But
very simple. I'll do that in a trip. But anyway, because I've gone so many places, I've been in New York City, which is here's the kid from Nebraska who's got the windmill in the back here. Love New York City. I mean, I can't imagine living there, but visiting
yeah.
is one of the funnest things. It's fantastic. Um, and I had the opportunity to take my mother-in-law there, who she'd been out in Nebraska maybe once or twice, but certainly never to the city, never to New
Right.
York City. And it's one of the most memorable trips I've ever had. And it wasn't about like, let's go see the Empire State Building. It's like, let's watch my mother-in-law go on
There you
her
go.
first visit to New York City. The first, flying in into LaGuardia, and we happened to be on the right side, the correct side of the plane to see the city line. And she was like a child. It was fantastic. And then riding in from she's 5 feet tall in stature, or 4'11" actually. So she's just kind of this tiny little thing. But watching her in this cab, the memory I have in my mind is when we're driving into Manhattan from LaGuardia, from what Queen. So now you're testing me.
Yeah,
Not
the
Queens.
LaGuardia, it's in Queens.
Queens, yeah, from Queens, and she's in a cab, and she's tiny, and her little. All you could see, I can only imagine, like from across the street, looking into the cab. There's this little woman that's got her. She's looking straight up at these skyscrapers, the skyline of New York City, and that's and it's that's what you're talking about. It's the rewarding part of like, hey, I've already done all these things, but now I'm going to help someone else have a memorable experience also. And because I've been there, I sort of know how we're going to do this. And so I get that.
I got to tell you, I get texts from my friends, whether even if I'm some of the people I'm not even talking to, but they're kids who I took, a part of it years and years ago. We went, and they were all of this big then, couldn't get on the ride, sat with me because they were too short. But how they'll text me, hey, miss you, saw this, thought of you. Oh, I'm doing this for the first time. I want, have to text you. The blessing and the curse of the electronic world we live in now with texts and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Or, ask Google anything in the world. But having said that, that's what is, fulfilling, if you will, that, you get those and you get you share those experiences. And now with, my grandson, Sydney's son, Cade, was just spent 2 weeks with us here in Connecticut because they had to escape the Texas heat. So, so we had him in a swimming pool, and we took him to the aquarium and to the zoo. And Sydney's already, Dad, it's going to be Disney. And I must tell you, obviously a little young now, but it'll be next year, Thanksgiving-ish, because that's always the time we like to go. You see the Christmas decorations and all that kind of stuff. Because I love the holiday season. That's my thing wherever I am. So we're going to start doing that, and yet, in its own way, because of this, we got to put disclaimers on the Disney movies from the cartoon. It's like, oh, you're killing me with this stuff. It's just you've taken the fantasy, the magic, the night. I don't want to call it naive, but there was a genuine sense of wonder that you were allowed to have when you're at Disney, that now they've become so politically correct or woke.
Sterilized. I'm sure you've read. I've read books about Walt Disney. Fantastic human being. I think he would just be sick to his stomach
over right now. I agree.
I think he'd be sick to his stomach.
I think that the family members per se at that, generations above, I just, we're living in, I think we live in the twilight zone, quite frankly, right about now. You know what I mean? What's right is wrong. What's wrong is right. Everything we grew up with before that we learned is right is now somehow wrong. I don't understand it. It's making me nuts.
Yeah. Well, this is probably the third time I've said this on this podcast, but it's like a radio show. Not everybody tunes in at the same time. But I had a great uncle who my brother told me he said this, and I didn't hear it, but I can hear him saying it. It was shortly before he died. And he said something to the effect of, seen a lot of change in my life, been against most of it.
I like that. I like that. I wish I didn't have to say against most of it, but these days, it really is. You can't, we've lost the ability to make fun of ourselves, to appreciate the differences. All we do is point out the differences as opposed to, appreciate the similarities. The fact that we all are ultimately we're human. We breathe the same air and we got the same blood. What is this nonsense about? And listen, is the glass half empty or half full? You can argue either one because you're both right. It is both half empty and half full if half is half. Having said that, I choose to talk about it being half full.
Always.
That's the way I approach most things, and it is much easier to be nice. It is much easier than being nasty and miserable.
Yeah.
To what end? So.
I think you just answered this question, and that is, why do you have such a positive attitude? I mean, you really do.
My mother, I kid around. I say my mother. We say she just had rose-colored glasses. That's how she lived her life. And watching, there was some early stuff with my grandfather. It was not that on my father's side was tough, and watching the relationship he had with my father. And I always saw that, and my mom was the mediator. It wasn't even. She was always make nice and tried to do that. And I think that made such an impression on me early on that I was always tried to find how could we diffuse it, make it easier, make it nicer, than that.
You're like my wife.
Fighting.
You're the peacemaker, Katz.
Yeah.
You're the peacemaker. You know.
I used to be called the facilitator by some, but
sure,
in some way, shapes, or form. But I don't know, Sam. I just find it. Hey, again, there's no tomorrows, right? Who knows what tomorrow brings? So why shouldn't we all try to have a smile, try to have a laugh, because it is contagious, And just mean people suck. Yeah. I have a T-shirt from one of my Grateful Dead days. And mean people do suck, and there's no reason for it. And maybe if you smile at them enough, you kill them with kindness.
Well, let me. The first time you and I met, what was your impression of me? Because most people, when they first meet me, think that guy is pissed off. You've seen me smile. I have the capability to smile, but I'm also not a clown. I'm not going to smile on demand because it's not who I am. What was your first impression of me then?
My first impression of you was that you take things in, that you were observing, as opposed to being you per se. And so I wasn't knowing what your personality was, but I was okay because I felt, again, if you went to that first call, by the way, it's incredible how much you can do on a phone call.
Yeah.
Besides, I'm
much better than a text, isn't it?
Eye. Yeah. Amen. But I'm a firm believer in looking somebody in the eye, but more importantly, their handshake tells me a lot. It really does. Because if your handshake doesn't mean anything, then I have no use for you.
Yeah.
But my sense was that you were always observing what was going on, trying to figure it out, and that ultimately you weren't full of shit. And I don't know what you want to. You can bleep it out as however you want.
No, it's in there, buddy.
But that's the general understanding. I am not about insincerity, and people. I go for genuine. I just go, this guy. You know what? He wasn't an operator. Which, by the way, somebody sent me a little text. I don't remember if you remember. There's a gentleman that we used to buy some leads from. When you were trying to find this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Just came up. Somebody sent me on a little run-in with the law the other day, and when I saw it was a friend of ours sent me the text, and I'm going to forward it to you, and you're going to see it. When I opened it up and I saw the guy who it was, I went, I had to make the phone call. So, but that was the world.
Now I'm dying of curiosity.
Well, I will. I'm going to send it to you. But one of the things not being a political animal. One of the things I always thought about was, there's what I call the business of politics. And everybody you meet has their hand out, what they can do, who they are. Oh, I can do your marketing. I can do your mailing. I know this one. Just pay me. Everybody's pay me.
You'll win if you hire me. Is that
That's
it?
right.
And we're not going to mention anybody's names, but
if
you do your research, somebody went to prison with that attitude. But anyway,
well, that's. I feel like we've been to. I feel like you and I
went
to war on that one. I don't know that I'll ever change. That's a lasting. Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know what our
because you know what?
statutes of
We did
limitations
the
are to
right
talk
thing.
about that. Yeah, we
Right.
did the right thing.
But we
That's
did the right
that's
thing,
ultimately that's it.
and that's how I look in the mirror every night when I go to bed. I don't care, because that's what you got to answer to. Between that and I always said I don't look good in stripes or orange, and so nobody's going to come visiting me on Tuesdays and Thursdays with a piece of plexiglass, and they can can touch the plexiglass with each other. So that's
Oh,
that's
so
the
good.
reality there. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
so this show is about cowboys and eggheads, and you've been a
Mm-hmm.
loyal listener since the
Yeah.
beginning. Thank you for that, by the way. So
That's it.
he's wearing my Cowboys Not Eggheads shirts in probably
Proudly.
places that they don't understand what that means. But what do you think about that whole concept, Marc Katz? I mean, you're not an egghead, really. You're a smart guy, but you're not a Ivy League guy or anything like that. What do you think of my little concept of life here?
But I like it. But you see, it's interesting. I think your concept of cowboy versus eggheads goes to sincerity, goes to being genuine, goes to those types of qualities, that are past those people that are just in life to network, those kinds of things. I think, and that's kind of where I draw it. It's allowing you to be you and trying to do the right thing. And again, your handshake matters. You know what I mean? It's representative of what you are and how you deal with people. And that's kind of how I always felt about it. It's not just the egghead is, oh, chapter 11 says this is what we do, as
Right.
opposed to being pragmatic. And that's one thing I've always felt you and I always look to myself as being very pragmatic. This is what it is. Don't care how we got there necessarily. Let's fix it on a go forward basis. You know, um, that's
Yeah.
how I felt the real difference goes to the
Yeah.
heart and soul of the matter.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very, very, very eloquently stated, sir. Um, so I looked up some questions today. I Googled like interesting questions to ask a podcast guest, and some of them are silly, but this one's actually kind of good. What are three movies that you would recommend to my listeners and why?
All right. Well, interesting. So, of my favorites in
Yeah.
time for various reasons. Once Upon a Time in America, first version, long version, um, great cast. Along, it's a Jewish version of The Godfather, basically, and
Okay.
which, if you don't watch Godfather movies, I'm sorry, 90% of how you can relate to life is in the Godfather movies. So I'd say
That's like
Once
baseball.
Upon a
Yeah.
Time America is an all time favorite, and Godfather were one or two. I know that's so. I'm going to consider that one movie as opposed to two separates. And I don't know, but my friends laugh at me for this, but I like, I like the feel good movies too, whether it be a Pitch Perfect. That might go to, that kind of,
Is that with Cameron Diaz, Cats?
no, that's with the, oh,
A
geez, that's the
Pitch
singing girls,
Perfect.
the a cappella group, and Andrea Kendrick or whatever her name is,
Okay,
Anna Kendrick or something.
okay. It's
It's
about a
just one of
musician.
those.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know. I'd have to come up with the third one, but the first two that jump to mind immediately about kind of how you are and what you are and how you deal with things, because it's the family about the Godfather for sure, and the Once Upon a Time in America. Got to see them. Those two are good
I have
ways to
not
shape
seen Once
yourself.
Time. I will see it. I
Oh,
will watch it.
Sam, got to be the long version. Do not go. They, they
Okay.
they tried to cut it together, make it chronological, but who's in it? De Niro's in it. We don't have to discuss him now. James Wood is in it. It's what's her name? Connolly, I think. She was a baby in it. Great movie. Just a great movie.
I will
Great
check it out.
soundtrack to go with it.
So
Yeah.
I recently saw. We're talking about movies. Well, it was a Sunday, and I had zero to do, which is very rare.
Right.
But my wife was out of town. I'm just sitting there watching the stupid tube, and I'm like, well, I got to
Yeah.
get up and do something. But it's one of those days where like you see a movie, and you saw another movie, like you can't move. And the two
Right.
movies were A Few Good Men, which is
You
just
can't handle the truth.
you
Yeah,
can't
it was
handle the
good.
truth.
Yeah.
And there's so many parallels to that movie
Yeah.
to this
Yeah.
podcast,
Right.
and then also Goodwill Hunting.
Never saw it. I just saw
Oh,
my
okay. Well,
Fantasy
then,
Trip.
so we
Okay.
both have assignments.
Okay.
You've got to see it. It's
I just
you,
thought of my third, but go
you'll
ahead.
love
Give me
it.
the Goodwill Hunting. I will.
Goodwill
It's
Hunting and
Matt
my
Damon, right? It's that.
yes, Matt Damon
Okay.
and
Is
his buddy
what's his name?
Ben
Affleck,
Affleck. Yeah,
right? But
that's it.
is that also the one? What's it? Robin Williams in that?
Yes,
No, okay,
Robin
no,
Williams
he
is in
is.
it. It's
Okay,
fantastic performance.
okay.
Fantastic. There's a line in there that says, "Just look for this line." It was, "If you ever disrespect my wife again, I will end you. You will get." It's a great
uh,
scene.
well,
Um,
all right. Movie number three. Just
yep,
thought of an
yep.
all-time favorite. Just catches it all. A League of Their Own.
Yeah, see, I haven't seen that either. I gotta
Oh,
see it. I
women's
know,
softball. It's a
I
great
know,
cast. Just
I
makes you
know.
feel good. Good.
I gotta
I
see
like
it.
relationships.
Right.
That gets me in there. The family
Yeah,
and
well,
how they
baseball's
always
like the
find.
Godfather. Everything is softball,
Yeah.
but I mean
There's
everything
no crying in
relates.
baseball.
Right, there's no crying. That's right. I
So
love
I
it.
would say those three are easy ones to play with a little bit.
Gotcha.
Solid stuff.
What question have I not asked you in this podcast that you wanted me to
Sam,
ask and you haven't answered?
Sam, I just wanted to have a conversation with you. So whatever we go through, we go through. I had no preconceived notions because I said to you early on, if you remember, one of the things I enjoyed about listening to your podcasts were it's not about the hot take. It was just about conceptual conversation and people, and it brought you into different places and different things. And that's what it was. So I really was not sitting here going, oh, what's he going to ask me? I said, you and I are just going to be what you and I have always been, the ability to talk to each other for all of our differences. There's a lot of similarity there.
Yeah.
And that's why, I'll tell the world, and you won't like this, but you know what? I hug Sam when I see him. He's just makes him a little nuts, but I'm a hugger. So
Well, and I'll tell the world that I just go with it because it's
yeah,
cats.
exactly. And you know what? I miss Brandy. Let me tell you something. So she's the one
And Brandy
who I
Preston
said
listeners has been on. She was like the third guest on this podcast. So go check out her story. But
there's as good people as you're going to find there. And with
yeah,
what I've gone with recently, we've had a lot of stuff go on.
sure.
And with my wife, but for the fact that following Brandy's story through all the years from when we first went in, I was, you brought her on as a kid from that campaign.
Yeah, 19.
And watched that, and that always did my heart.
That was a conversation I remember too. You said we need something in this campaign like energy
Yeah.
or something, or like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I've got somebody. I remember talking to her. I said, hey, what do you think about moving to Connecticut? She goes, I'd love to. I'm like, okay. Anyway, she gets there and you met her for the first time and you called me and you're just like, oh, Sam. I mean, like, Sammy, this is the best thing ever. I mean,
Well, and also, but you notice, I protected her like a
of course.
father.
Well, I knew
I
you would.
felt,
And I knew
yeah.
I would not send a 19-year-old employee across the country
Oh
unless I
man,
knew
yeah,
I was secure what was on the other side. So, yeah, good stuff.
yeah.
Good stuff. Well, listen,
Mm-hmm.
buddy, we got a lot of good
Same.
nuggets in there. I'm going to
Yeah.
derive the title. We'll have to wait to see what the title of this podcast is. But you gave me about 4 or 5 nuggets. I didn't write them down fast enough, but there's something in there. So,
Sam, I leave myself in your hands. As when they first started, you'd asked me so long ago, and I said, "Oh, you said you're my friend. We'll always talk, and don't worry, it's not about it's not about I gotcha." And
this
so
podcast is about conversations with people I know, and I just happen to know really interesting people. So you're one
Amen.
of them.
And again, you could. I chalk a lot of it up to Sydney, and I think you always got such a kick out of watching her growth
Oh,
and what she was compared to with me, and what you knew me to be. To say nothing of what with Mark Greenberg and that whole political part of things. So I think you got to see a very interesting dynamic
and the
take
story
place
is
there.
still being told.
Oh, I'm telling you, the other day when I'll let you know when I asked her. I said to her when she texted me. She said, "Dad, what hunt do you want to do this year?" And I said, "What do you want?" She goes, "No, what do you want?" And I'm like, so then we picked up the phone and had the conversation about it. So I'm curious to see what it comes through. But it should be interesting because Africa was really something too, because she Brady proposed to her while we were in Africa. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a whole other thing too, without my wife being there. So we had to, get it in. But really, some wonderful things. And I look back and I go, lucky guy. I don't want to I don't want to trade places with anybody for 15 minutes, because who knows what stuff they deal with. I know what I have to deal with, and it's not so bad.
Yep.
So life is good, man. Life is
Yep.
good.
Thanks for being my
So I
friend,
thank you for
buddy.
this, Sammy.
You
Yeah.
got it.
Well, I thank you.